Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
Good morning. It's 8:07 a.m. You are here on WMAL. Here, I'm Sean Kennedy, co-hosting with the inimitable Larry O'Connor, who will be joining us shortly. And we have on the phone Alex Plitsas. And Alex is the former White House hostage policy team member and former Pentagon official who is a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council. Alex, thank you for joining us this morning. It's a real pleasure, and I know this is your bailiwick as to what has gone on in the last few days. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you saw go on behind the scenes in your experience doing hostage negotiation that can bring us some insight into what happened here?
Sure, appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on. So, yeah, I've been working on hostage cases for about the last 10 years or so. So I was on the White House hostage policy review the last time it was reviewed in about 2015. So not so much negotiating on behalf of this, was more policy and then having some direct involvement with cases over the last few years in multiple countries. So what I saw going on was rather remarkable. This had to have been the most complex hostage situation I've ever seen in my short career in the last 15, 20 years. Or been briefed on from historic cases, in the sense that you had over 200 people hidden and spread across a large area, making like a simultaneous hostage rescue operation virtually impossible. Hamas did the inevitable, where they ended up executing a couple of hostages, but there was an attempted rescue during captivity, over a year ago. And so it really left the Israelis in a very difficult position in the sense that there was no one else operating inside Gaza besides them and Hamas. There were miles of tunnel networks, and so it really left no choice but to try to finish this through negotiations, or else the remaining hostages would have potentially been killed. So it really put the Israelis' backs into a corner.
So go ahead, Alex. What I was going to say, so one of the things that I'm always curious about is how do you even start a negotiation like this? Because these sides are obviously so intractably opposed to each other. How do the Israelis make contact with Hamas? Who is the interlocutor for you to go into a negotiation like this?
So that's actually a brilliant question, a great one to start with, and not many people don't ask. So the Qataris have gotten a bad rap from some folks who have come down. Prime Minister Netanyahu said some harsh words, but they've hosted Hamas, they've hosted the Taliban in our request specifically to help facilitate negotiations. And the Qatari Emir, I've had the privilege of hearing him speak a few times and being at a few conferences with him, having a chance to engage. And as long as both parties are willing to talk, the Qataris will host under certain conditions and do so. So Hamas's political office had been moved to Doha in Qatar, and so there was therefore a mechanism to engage them with. The first question becomes, are you talking to the right people, right? And that's a matter of control. That's why you saw very early on there were two women that were released near immediately, two older women that were there, and that was a request for a demonstration that Hamas and the people they were talking to actually had the ability to exert control over the process. Because at the end of the day, you want to figure out who the decision maker is, what they want, what you're able to do and not able to do policy-wise. In this case, this is declared, designated terrorist organization. Mm-hmm. And like the last point on that is there's a misnomer that there's no negotiating with terrorists. No, you'll negotiate and you'll talk to them, right? It doesn't mean you're going to give them a policy concession, which is where the line break is. Yeah. So it becomes a question of what they want. And in this case, Hamas took over 200 hostages. They were scattered from kibbutzes and small towns all over Israel. So it was clear that this wasn't some random cell of terrorists that decided to take hostages at the last minute. To take hostages at that large of a scale across that area would have meant there would have been an order given or it was pre-planned. And you wouldn't take, because it's a pain. You have to care for those people, take care of them, keep them alive, or else they're of no value to you. And the only reason you would take them in that number and that swath of an area is that you would have had to have known what you were planning to do if successful was so bad that the Israeli military response would be overwhelming, and your only hope of ending a war without total annihilation of the group would be a hostage swap.
We are speaking with Alex Plitsas, a former White House hostage policy team member, now with the Atlantic Council. And, trust is a big part of this, and it's hard to base any negotiations and a hopeful resolution when you can't fully trust the other side. And it's got to be hard to come to the table and look at Hamas and think, oh, yeah, we can trust them. So how do you bridge that gap? Or is it just sort of, show me, and then I'll start trusting you when you start actually giving me some actions.
It's a good point. So the first point, again, was to start with those two women early on to demonstrate that they were both capable and willing, and then finding out what they wanted. The next then is, you have to, little good faith measures here or there usually to get it done. And in the case of Hamas, where this was difficult is that they had diametrically opposed end states virtually from the beginning, in that Hamas was seeking assurances that it would be part of some post-war security element and be allowed to keep its weapons. Now, I saw the video of the attack the Israelis compiled. It's basically Hamas GoPro footage, which we now know from the leaked letter the other day that Yahya Sinwar wrote, that their direction was to take the videos on purpose because they wanted to galvanize and hopefully get people in the West Bank and the broader Arab world to then join in on this terrorist attack, which obviously didn't happen. Yeah. So it was Hamas's own footage. And it shows about 10% of the deaths. I have never seen anything so heinous because they actually enjoyed what they were doing in the video. So it makes it extremely difficult to trust and leave a group like that armed on your border. So from the onset, they were opposed.
Alex, how important was the strike on Iran's nuclear facilities in terms of setting the stage here and sending a message that things have changed?
I think it was pretty substantive, to be honest with you. There were just a few major factors that contributed, in my opinion, right? So keeping the Israelis from striking at different actors in the region, there were two main forms of deterrence. There was a massive missile stock in southern Lebanon that Hezbollah maintained via Iran that would have rained down on Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and overwhelmed the air defense systems. And then you had the ballistic missile stocks in Iran, and then the nuke program. So that was really what was seen as keeping the Israelis in check from a conventional weapons deterrence perspective, because nobody, would have overwhelmed the Iron Dome. So after Israel took out the ballistic missile stocks and the pager, sabotage attack in Lebanon to take out the fighters, then during the 12-day war, they wiped out most of the missile stocks, and they also took out the nuke program, and the Syrian government was overthrown. It became very clear at that point, all of the outside actors, there was nobody who was going to be able to step in and put a stop to Israeli military activity if they wanted to continue.
Quickly, Alex, and thank you for all of this. You hear President Trump saying that he believes this is the foundation for a lasting and stabilizing peace in that region. Is that possible? You hear talk now of a two-state solution, and the last time they moved in that direction, the people of Gaza elected Hamas, and we see what happened then. What does the future look like based on this foundation?
So I think it's certainly a foundation, but I think we are far ways away from peace right now, and I think we are much further away from a two-state solution. I know that's not what anybody wants to hear, but there are some ingredients that are missing. To your point, there hasn't been an election in Gaza since 2006. And it was also held in the West Bank. And at that point, the Israelis said no to elections in East Jerusalem that the Palestinians were demanding. Yeah. So there hasn't been elections in 20 years. There is no viable opposition government in waiting. There is no one to take over. There is no partner for peace in Gaza of any kind. So we have to do what we call nation and state building. And by we, I mean the broader community. I don't know who will end up paying for all of this at some point, to rebuild the infrastructure that was destroyed, as well as the governing capacity, because Hamas has controlled every institution top to bottom in the entire Gaza Strip, from the health ministry to finance to also having an armed, militant and terrorist wing. So, at some point, where do you break the line? How do you do that? That's going to take time, and there is zero political or emotional appetite for a two-state solution inside Israel. So everybody's asking for a state based on 67 borders. I don't see the ingredients there right now.
It sounds reasonable. And by the way, just so you know, we aren't looking to hear that there's a two-state solution coming. We're fine with it as long as the people of Israel and that nation is secure and their innocent civilians are protected. We don't need a two-state solution from our perspective. So, thank you, sir.
Not the station. Sorry about that.
That's fine. I don't mind it at all. We tell it like it is. All right. Thanks, Alex. Great talking with you.
Thanks for having me.